Devon Wildlife Trust has initiated the Creating Species Highways project with Animex International and Devon Biodiversity Record Centre, and we're looking at where we put in species crossings. We've got these amazing road networks which are wonderful for us, but of course they cause challenges for wildlife moving through our environment. They create barriers in the landscape. Enabling species to move across roads and other risky areas safely is going to transform the ability for wildlife to recover. Nature's in an appalling state. We've seen huge declines in nature, and connectivity within our very altered landscape is a really important thing to address. This project is trying to do that at a strategic level. We were right at the beginning of that. It's going to take a long time, but the learning that comes from this can start to build our understanding of how to make that happen. Creating Species Highways project has been funded by National Highways through the Network for Nature programme, and it's looking to address the impacts of the strategic road network on connectivity for species in our landscapes. So the strategic road network doesn't just provide us with great opportunities to move through a landscape, it does for many species as well. And the softer state that often sits alongside the road network provides a key corridor for many species to move through our landscapes at a time when there aren't as many corridors as we'd like, and we know we need to create more. By making better use of those corridors and providing opportunities to, while moving down the corridor, they can also hop across the road network, which is where the risk is. Species can make better use of the landscape. Now, when we start to then take that learning and also link up between the highway network on the county level, but also the rail network, we've got a whole road network for species highways. Clearly, in a perfect world, we'd love species to be able to move absolutely anywhere in our landscapes. That's never going to be absolutely practical when we've got the infrastructure we've got, but our ambition is to move to much closer to that. When we take a landscape and we put some linear infrastructure, so a road or a railway or a canal or anything of that sort across it, straight away you're creating a barrier in that landscape for some species. Some will be able to move across it or it won't impact them, but for species, particularly mobile species that need, or species with different populations that need to interact, it creates a barrier. So the impact on populations varies by the species that you're looking at. Some animals, like invertebrates, need to have multiple populations that can interact with each other, so that if one gets hit by disease or a bad year, they can repopulate an area. Others are very mobile, so bats or pine martens, for example, are very mobile, and what you're doing by putting this in the way is partially putting a risk of road traffic accident to that animal, but also potentially limiting their ability to make use of a large part of the landscape. So you're reducing the numbers of species of that animal that is likely to be able to exist in the wild. Then you're also sometimes trapping animals in dead ends or in risky areas. So where, let's say, there's development and roads, but there's an isolated population, they can no longer move out of that area. They're restricted there. That puts them at higher risk of both extinction from that local patch, but also the direct impacts in terms of mortality to those animals. So within the scope of this project, we've looked at existing features on the road network and how we could retrofit interventions that would help species to cross, or to actually in some places prevent crossings to reduce mortality risk. That's a really important part of how we address species connectivity in the landscape, because we can't possibly go and build a green bridge everywhere we want to enable species to go across. We've got these features. This is a cost-effective way of building species crossings into the way we manage the roads. We don't have to change every bridge, every culvert, but simple adaptations that are cost effective mean we can just build it into the way we operate. So we often invest a lot of effort, energy and money around managing and ensuring that our designated sites are managed and delivering for the designation that they have. We don't often step outside of those and look at how is wildlife moving through the wider landscape. And that's important because those sites can't operate in isolation. We have to provide connections across the landscape to move from, let's say, one special area of conservation to another SSSI to another county wildlife site. The interventions we're talking about in this project are really key to delivering that for a number of species, and understanding the mechanisms by which we can put in interventions on the road network will enable those designated sites to achieve a better condition in the future. So there's some learning from this project that could be applied to things like local nature recovery strategies, for example, which at the minute are looking at the recovery of habitats across counties usually, but based on species. Identifying sites that are critical sites that could enable crossings for species would help the delivery of local nature recovery strategies. That's not always going to be possible through a very large intervention, a very costly intervention. By identifying cost-effective interventions across a county, we can enable local nature recovery strategies to be able to deliver connectivity and choose perhaps representative species that we know have particular behaviours that could help us to understand how a broad suite of species might interact. Then we can target that, we can look at particular areas and understand, okay, within this area we've got multiple crossing features, we've got multiple habitats, multiple designations, multiple species. We choose a few of them to monitor through a range of methods and see what we can learn about how they interact with the road.